Good afternoon. I'm Butterfly Blaise Boire, and I'm the Title IX coordinator. This video will be one of a three-part series where myself, Saeja Nadler, and Autumn Bennett will be communicating to you our different roles and responsibilities on campus, and hopefully answering some questions about how this will work remotely while we're navigating these difficult times. So I will start by saying that I have attempted to do this video 5 times at this point. I do have a couple puppies at home, and they may bark here or there. I'm going to try to continue to record and navigate around that, but I do apologize. So my prominent role on campus as the Title IX coordinator is to ensure that we are upholding our campus community members' rights and responsibilities. And this is navigating and making sure that we are filling the requirements for both federal regulation and law as well as state law. So I'll speak a minute about that for you. So Title IX specifically is a 1972 amendment to the Education Act that says no person on the basis of sex may be discriminated, denied equal access, or excluded in any public educational institution that's receiving federal funding. So that includes kindergarten through 12th grade and extends to college campuses. And in addition to that, we have something called the Violence Against Women Act, which is also a federal law, which overlaps with state law 129B, which was enacted in July 2015 and is often coined enough is enough legislation, which was new legislation for college campuses in regards to what we must be doing to uphold people's rights and responsibilities if they experience sexual or interpersonal violence. And so it really set the bar. We were only the second state in the United States to have state legislation in regards to this. It gave a universal definition to consent. It upped what we needed to do in terms of accommodations and resources for students, faculty, or staff who reported experiencing such acts of violence. And it really kind of put campuses on notice that these issues are really being taken much more seriously. And we are under the microscope of both federal and state bodies that are watching what we do. So in that capacity, I have to be making sure that we are complying with each of those things. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter what we are trying to fulfill in terms of compliance or mandates. Our job is to go beyond those compliance and mandates and make sure that we are serving people in a holistic and individualized manner and giving everything that we can to help people get through these experiences and to ultimately have a fulfilling and enriching academic experience. So when we're navigating this remotely, what that will look like is connecting with people in this way. So through video, through phone conversation, whatever they're most comfortable with, and finding a way to really research the areas that they're in and find ways that we can provide support through their professors on campus if they need extra help with completing assignments or extensions on completing assignments. If they are in an unsafe environment where they are currently living and they need to get out, that would mean connecting with local resources and bodies in the areas of which they are, and or getting them emergency housing still on campus. That is something that we would need to do if there was a need for that for an individual's safety. So those are things that we will continue to do during this time. I'd like to walk you through a little bit of what it would be like if you were to come into my office and file a report. Ultimately, what my job is to do is to explain to any individual coming into my office what your rights and responsibilities are, and then lay out all of the options for you. So in most instances, I'm not going to make any decisions for anyone without their consent. So what I mean by that is, predominantly as a Title IX coordinator, when we become aware that there is a risk on campus or that someone has been harmed, there are 3 specific things that we should be working to do immediately. Number 1 is stopping that behavior from happening again. So immediately putting an end to whatever has been reported to us. coming up with a solution to what the person's experienced. And that's what I'm going to walk you through in a minute in terms of what those different solutions can work from, and then preventing that behavior from happening again. If in the discovery of the information that's provided to us, we find out that the person is giving us information that links to a person that has been named as causing harm, that has caused harm to other people, then that's going to inform decisions that we need to make about how we need to move forward with investigations or how we're going to handle those cases. Additionally, there's a difference between someone coming forward and saying that they've been personally harmed, but if in getting that information from them, we're able to gather information that tells us perhaps that what they've experienced, other people are at risk of experiencing, or other people have experienced. Sometimes we're in situations where we need to act absent of the reporting individual's desire to do so. So there's always weighing the personal safety risk against the campus safety risk, which is not usually how it goes, meaning I'm not usually in a position where I'm needing to push things outside of someone's comfort zone or choice, but it's just really important that I point that out to people, that if you bring something to me that tells me that other people are at risk or there's a campus safety risk, I'm going to tell you exactly what I need to do, but I'm going to need to make decisions differently. So if, let's say, you come into the office to report that you've experienced discrimination, harassment, sexual and or interpersonal violence, one of the things that I'm going to do is provide a space just to listen to what you've experienced. How we'll navigate that is going to be really different depending on the circumstances and what decisions a person wants to make or may choose to make. And what I mean by that is that this is a trauma-informed approach. I don't want to be asking questions or interrogating someone to give me information that they might not feel comfortable doing, or that might not be necessary for me to do my job. So we're kind of going to walk through how I would present the options to someone first before trying to gather information about what is the reported incident or alleged incident at that point in time. So I'm going to attempt to share the screen with you right now. What I would like you to see is what I'm looking at, and that is the document that we would go over if someone comes into the office. It is the victim services notice. So this is a document that I would go over with someone who comes into the office. It was not created by Title IX. It is a Department of Justice document, or at least has come out of the criminal justice system. And so that's why the language specifically says victim service notice. In our office, we use the terms reporting individual. So that's someone who has reported that they've experienced discrimination, harassment, or violence. And we use the word accused individual. So that is someone who might have been accused of causing harm to someone. We do not like to put terms on people such as victims or survivor. I believe that that's an individual choice and something that that person should choose for themselves. So things that we would talk to about with people if they come forward to report these incidents is the importance of keeping evidence. So this is something that's really difficult to navigate with people because if, for example, you've been experiencing dating violence or stalking, you probably don't want to be looking at the messages or pictures or the harassing content that someone's been sending you on a regular basis. But from the perspective of being able to hold people accountable, if you make a choice to file a formal action either on campus or criminally, that information becomes so much more important. So we speak to people about the idea of keeping messages, of keeping photographs, of keeping documentation that you might have, keeping clothing if it was an incidence of rape. For a criminal investigation, that becomes much more important, again, for the burden of proof if you do move forward in filing charges. Additionally, what we talk about is that the Title IX process or the campus process, if we're adjudicating through the student conduct system, or if this is going on to HR for employee relations adjudication, the burden of proof is a preponderance of evidence. So it means more likely than not. So 51% one way or the other. If we're looking at a criminal justice process, we're in the zone of beyond a reasonable doubt. So when it comes to things like evidence in a criminal justice proceeding, what you need there is much different than what we perhaps would gather in a Title IX hearing. So an example of that would be in terms of preserving evidence. For a Title IX case, generally what I will do is I will have someone scroll through their phone in the messages so they can show me the timestamp, so I can bear witness to the fact that what they're showing me is in fact coming from their phone and it wasn't created through an app or something of that nature to try to manipulate the information. So it is enough for me to have that, for me to take a photograph with another camera and document that. In a police investigation, and I won't speak too much to this because I think that it's important that if you have questions about a criminal justice process, you speak directly to police officers or criminal justice professionals. But what I would say is one blatant difference that we find here is that if you are wanting to go through with filing charges in the criminal justice process and it comes down to evidence, it is not enough to have pictures of those messages. You have to be able to turn over the device with the messages to prove definitively that those messages came from that device. So that's one example of the difference in the process and why we discuss these types of things in this initial meeting when people are trying to decide what choices they want to make moving forward. Next, we would go on to talk about ways that you can report. So it does sometimes turn out that people come to my office because they don't know that there are other ways that they can report. As always, there are 3 ways to report. Someone can report anonymously. So you'll see down here, there is a link to report anonymously in this form. And it will come to me and a person can provide as little or as much information as they want to. Usually this is just for gathering statistical information. Sometimes people make me aware of something or want others on campus to be aware of something that we might not be. So it might be a way for them to provide information that way. So before someone discloses anything specific to me, I'm going to say to them, you don't have to tell me anything, even though you're here. I will still go over everything with you, but these are still your choices moving forward before you provide me with any information at this point in time. So from there, if they don't want to report anonymously, they can report confidentially. So that would be to campus health services, campus counseling services, that would be community resources. So in our community, those community resources are sexual assault services of Planned Parenthood, who have a 24-hour hotline, which is included on this form on our website. So if you put in Title IX in the Google search engine in Plattsburgh, you will find all of this information there as well. And they also offer counseling services or advocacy services. Much like our office and much like many offices during this time, Sexual Assault Services is offering remote options. So they are offering through application, I believe it's called Blue Jean, where they can do teleconferencing. They do have an individual who is their Enough is Enough coordinator who will be providing those one-on-one counseling sessions with individuals and helping to navigate advocacy. The advocacy piece comes in more so when it comes to a sexual violence report. If someone wants someone to go with them to the hospital when they have a SANE examination. So a SANE examination is an examination performed specifically to gather evidence for potential criminal justice adjudication. So it's a specific examination that's done at the emergency room. There's a separate room, and there is the opportunity to have an advocate be present with you through that whole process at CVPH Medical Center. So that is offered through Sexual Assault Services here in our community and across the country at many other resources that provide similar services. Additionally, we have the community resource of Stop Domestic Violence, who focuses on providing resources to people who have experienced interpersonal violence. So dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, much like Planned Parenthood and ourselves, as I've said before, they are providing remote services, including emergency services. So they do have emergency houses in the community that they can put individuals in who are experiencing violence. And they can answer questions through their 24-hour hotline, which will be open during this time as well. Likewise, again, those resources are provided in multiple communities across the country. So if a student presents and I'm going through these options with them, I will get information about where they are, and then I will help to connect with that county or that area that they live in to get that information for them. Moving on, I would then talk to people about the difference between campus adjudication or criminal justice adjudication. When someone comes forward to report an incident, they have the right to do many different things. So they can just come in and say, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm just going to tell you that I experienced harassment, discrimination, or violence, and I just want you to go over with me what my options are. If that's what they say to me, then that's all that I'm going to do on that day and time. If they change their mind, they can come back at any point in time and engage any other part of the process or engage any other resources or accommodations. So what that could look like is they could say, at this point, I'm just looking for an informal resolution. For instance, I just want you to reach out to the person who has engaged in this behavior and maybe have a conversation with them about why this is problematic, and have a conversation with them about definitions and about expectations and social boundaries and that type of thing. So sometimes we will engage in meetings like that that are not meant to be punitive. They are meant to be a learning experience. They're meant for someone to have growth in that area. Additionally, it might be some passive education. So sometimes if something is going on, say on a floor of a residence hall, we will work with housing, community living and housing to offer programming or to do group education to a team or something of that nature. So then again, we're not outing anyone in that scenario, meaning we're not specifically calling out the person who's been accused of engaging in the behavior. We are just doing kind of a blanket presentation or some educational work to say, these are the campus expectations. This is what qualifies as this type of behavior. And these are the consequences if you may choose to engage in this type of behavior. So a formal process would get into the point where someone might say, I want this to be fully investigated and I want this person to be held accountable. If a person says that, at that point, we are going to say, okay, you can make the choice to file these charges through the campus process, through the criminal justice process, through both at the same time. So both processes happen independent of one another. We often work together to share information and to collaborate, but they're two separate processes and each must work independently from the other. So if a person chooses to engage in a formal investigative process, it is much lengthier. We then would move into taking statements from all individuals involved. That would include taking a statement from the reporting individual, gathering any evidence they may have, taking any names of any witnesses that they would identify, and really spending a lot of time going through all of that information and connecting with each of those witnesses to get all of the information that they can provide. If this moves on to a formal action, now that we do have the addition of Autumn Bennett in our office as our Title IX investigator and non-discrimination investigator, we now have the privilege of being able to separate these duties. So that means after I've gone through someone's rights and responsibilities and what we can offer them, it would then move on to Autumn. So I'm not going to get too much into what that process looks like, but that is a choice that someone can take. And when Autumn provides the video of what her role is, she will speak to you about what that would actually look like if someone engaged a formal process. So in continuing to look on at this victim services notice, we talk about those adjudication options. We then go on to talk about safety services and accommodations offered on campus. So if someone engages in a formal process or just wants to engage in an interim measure to stop the alleged behavior from happening, we can issue something called a no contact order on campus. What this is it is a mutual agreement between all parties involved that there will be no direct communication. This is something that is a policy that we work to get a consensus on between myself as a Title IX coordinator, the Chief of Police, Patrick Rasco, and the Director of Student Conduct, Larry Allen. So if this is something that's going to be extended over the period of an investigation and through any potential adjudication, then we will vote on that and make a decision from there. What this no contact order does is it creates a campus agreement that usually between two parties that they will not have contact through face-to-face, through email, through social media, intentionally through a third party, and so on. And if it is violated, it is something that potentially either side, either party, whether it's a reporting individual or accused individual, could face separate student conduct charges regardless of whether or not they are found responsible for what they were initially accused of. So it is an interim measure to help to prevent that contact from occurring and to prevent any further harm from occurring. Other things that can be provided and are discussed when going over this victim services notice is that we can provide room combination changes. We can work with community living and housing staff to get room changes for individuals who don't feel safe where they're currently living on campus. We can work with them if they do have a criminal order of protection to ensure that that is being complied with on campus, and that we are doing what we can do to mitigate that process or mitigate any harm with that process in place. Additionally, we would work, specifically myself, I would work with individuals, professors, to navigate reasonable accommodations. So if someone's experienced interpersonal or sexual violence under 129B, we are required as a campus community to wrap around them with services. One of those expectations is that faculty members will provide interim reasonable accommodations. So reasonable accommodations would look like things such as if someone missed an exam because they experienced harm, then we would work to offer them an opportunity to make up that examination. If someone is experiencing ongoing trauma from the experience, and they need time to heal, we would ask for extensions on assignments or extra time in test taking, which we would then work through student support services. Additionally, we would find ways with that person to say, what could we do right now to help you feel supported? What would help you to get through this time period to complete your academic work? And then I would work with the faculty members to see how we can serve the student in meeting those needs. This sometimes goes on over an extended period in the semester because trauma is not something that you can put a timeline on, meaning everybody's experience is different. People heal differently. Sometimes we think we've healed and it comes back. So we really have to work to be patient with individuals and to help serve them in a way that provides empathy for the fact that the accommodations need to be reasonable, meaning that it isn't an opportunity for someone to take advantage, for example, of those accommodations past the point of what's necessary. But we also have to allow flexibility for the fact that this isn't going to be over in a week. And also, another thing to think about is this is where equity really comes into the conversation, in that what one person needs is going to be much different than what another person needs. So one person experiencing trauma is much different than another person experiencing trauma. For example, if someone's experienced trauma before, this new experience is going to compound that trauma and then bring up old experiences for them. Additionally, if someone experiences other types of oppression and harassment and discrimination based on factors of their identity, this is going to be so much more compounded for them. So even individuals who have been in a situation of experiencing this themselves, they have no way to really know what it feels like to be in that person's shoes. So navigating this just takes a lot of patience and empathy. So what that means is lots of faculty members have things written into their syllabus that says you can miss one exam, you can miss an assignment and it wouldn't impact your overall grade. Part of this reasonable accommodation is not taking that away from that person, meaning they have experienced something traumatic, they're reporting to us that someone's caused them harm. They shouldn't lose the things that have already been offered to them because of this harm that they could not do anything about. So we need to leave those things on the table and find ways to add on to those things that other students are not yet receiving, if that makes sense. It is a case-by-case situation, and that's why this is discussed in great detail when someone comes in to go over resources and accommodations. And it is something that when I'm reaching out to the professors, if at any point in time they have questions, we can spend time really going over different scenarios and trying to figure out how to best serve the student. So that is a really important piece of what students have access to when they come in to report that they've experienced interpersonal violence or sexual violence. I think it's important too to note that these accommodations and resources are available to employees, staff, and visitors as well. They just look a little bit different depending on who the person is reporting. So for instance, those accommodations that I spoke about in relation to students, similarly, if an employee experiences violence in the workplace, we're going to work with their supervisors or with human resources to find ways to provide them accommodations in their workspace. It might mean needing to change offices. It might mean needing some time away from the office itself. It might mean extensions. It could mean a bunch of different things, but that is our job, to work with individuals, whoever they are, to figure out the best way that we can serve them during the time that they are healing from what they have experienced. So that would be discussed as well. When students come in as a reporting individual, I would talk to them about their rights in regards to accessing counseling services. So students can walk into the counseling center at any point in time on their own, but I also will do that referral for them so that we can initiate that process sooner in some instances. So that is provided to students who come forward as reporting individuals. Likewise, if an employee comes forward to report, I would give them information to link up to employee assistance program to get support there for also getting counseling services or other services that confidential option provides on campus. So there's a whole lot of information that is provided in this document. It includes escort services if someone doesn't feel safe on campus. University police will walk with them. It includes navigating visas and how to handle things if someone experiences violence while studying abroad or in another country. So that it's very complex, and it's really difficult to explain all the intricacies of this document or what we offer to individuals who come forward in this video. But what this time spent with someone is, and the first time they come into my office, is to figure out what they need, how what we can provide serves them, and how I can work to answer their questions, whether we need to meet 1 time or 10 times, because this is a lot of information to digest in a short period of time. This form is a carbon copy, meaning I keep one for my files and I give a copy of this to the reporting individual. So when we are done reviewing it, they would sign this, they would date it, they would get a copy of it to keep for the records. On the back of the document, it talks about the Student's Bill of Rights, which was enacted with the New York State Law 129B, and it goes through all of that information. Additionally, it gives links to our policies. So a lot of questions that people have can be answered through reading through these policies, or again, going through the website. And a lot of times, what I'm going to do in this first meeting is say, we went through a whole lot of information. I know it's a lot to process. Would you like to take some time to digest this information, and then let's schedule an appointment to meet tomorrow or in a couple days, and we'll go back over and answer questions and decide what you do or don't want to do next. So very often my meeting with people is over a series of meetings before we get to a point where someone's deciding what they do or don't want to do. Important to say, though again, even if I've said it before, is that if someone chooses an informal resolution, but at some point decides that has not served them, then they can make a decision to engage a formal process. Additionally, if they say, no, I don't want counseling today, they can ask for counseling at any point moving forward. If they say, I don't need accommodations today, but then a month from now, they're finding themselves struggling to get through the day-to-day activities, I'm going to work with them and work with faculty members, or again, work with their supervisors to find a way to support them. So this isn't a one and done situation. This is a document just to provide more information, and this is the beginning of ongoing communication with individuals to say, the Title IX office is here for you. There are multiple other resources in the community and on campus, and when and if you are ready for this support, we will be here. So we really work to go through all that information in a way that's holistic, trauma-informed, and individualized based on that person's need, by the intersection of that person's identity, that person's previous experience, where they are right now in terms of their positionality on campus, in their environments. So we really work to try to break this down in a way that that person is in charge, because when someone experiences interpersonal or sexual violence, it can feel like a very powerless experience where it is about dominance. It is about trying to take control from someone. And in a situation where someone's in the aftermath of that and working on healing and working on processing that trauma, we want to be providing options that are choices to say, these are all the things that you can do. And I'm not here to tell you what you should or should not do. I'm just here to present you with everything that I have, and to walk alongside you in whatever choice that you make. So that is the primary goal of our office, to provide support as little or as much as someone may need, from beginning to end, and to suspend any judgment or to refrain from telling someone what they should or should not do in these situations. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds because that was a lot of information in a short period of time, so I can just regather to make sure that I am getting everything out in this video. So I think I paused the share and I did not pause the recording. So I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to go back to the recording. It's important to point out that in my role, I have a responsibility to provide support to all parties involved. So the reason why we talk about so many resources provided on campus or in the community is because we each are pieces of a process that someone might decide to engage in. As a Title IX coordinator, my job is to wrap around all individuals as part of this experience and provide them resources that are equitable to their positionality in the experience and what they might need. But I am not an advocate, meaning I don't get to make a decision about whose side I'm on. My opinion in the matter of what did or did not happen is irrelevant. And I have to treat whoever's coming into my office with compassion, with respect, and with empathy, that with whatever side of the table you're sitting on, this is a very difficult experience to go through. The people who make decisions about how people should or should not be held accountable are further down in the process, and I am not one of those people. So just like I would provide information to reporting individuals, I also would be I would be the person that would provide resources and information to someone who's an accused individual. So very similar to everything that I would go over with the reporting individual, and as I just went over with you with that victim services notice, our office has created a form called an accused individuals checklist. So I'm going to try to share that with you now to show that form that would be shared with an individual who has been accused of either perpetuating harassment, discrimination, or violence. And let's see where this is. And clearly, all right, here it is. So I'm going to try to attempt to do this now. What does this say? No. All right, so I hope that it's showing. What it should say at the top is the SUNY Plattsburgh Title IX Accused Respondent Checklist. So again, very similar to the form that's gone over with the reporting individuals. I would speak to an individual who's been accused of discrimination, harassment, or violence of all of the resources, both on campus and off campus. And that would include explaining my role to that person, explaining what they've been accused of, because any person who is accused of these things has due process rights. And again, in my role, I have to be an impartial party who is upholding all individuals' rights. So I would discuss with them what they've been accused of, and then ultimately what their choices are moving forward. So I would go over with them the different campus and community resources as under resources. There would be a highlight of the policies that I would recommend that they look over based on what they've been accused of. That is covered on this form. And then it goes into talking about their rights. If someone's accused of sexual or interpersonal violence, and there's a formal process in place, meaning the person that is accused, them, the reporting individual, wants there to be a formal investigation for charges through the student conduct system or through employee relations or human resources. That person has a right to choose whether or not they want to participate in that process. Something I should back up and say, and in both of these instances, that whether it's a reporting individual or an accused individual, they have the right to have an advocate or an advisor of their choice present with them at any point in this process. And I will always communicate that to them in the meetings that I have with them. So when they're providing me a statement, if they want that person to be present with them, they can have that person with them. What that person's role is, they cannot speak on behalf of the reporting individual or the accused individual, but they can be there to provide support for the person who is reporting something or has been accused of something. From an advocacy standpoint, this is sometimes someone from sexual assault services or from Stop Domestic Violence. It could be a friend, it could be a family member. It could be someone who is specifically well-versed in our policies on campus. So in regards to advisors, if people want to connect with Larry Allen, who is the Director of Student Conduct, he has a list of individuals who've been trained in our policies and procedures, so that if they serve as an advisor for someone who's been accused of sexual or interpersonal violence, they can provide them their knowledge or their understanding of our policies and procedures, and give them some extra tools to make informed decisions about how they want to move forward. So advisors, advocates, whatever terminology is being used, those people are always welcome and are provided in the event someone doesn't have someone chosen themselves. So if an accused comes in and is responding to what they've been accused of, I'm going to explain to them that they can have an advisor present. I'm going to explain to them that they have the right to give a voluntary statement and evidence, which would then be moving on to Autumn Bennett if they chose to do so, but they don't have to. If someone's accused of something and they just want to respond to this at a hearing, then that is their right. We cannot make them provide a statement. We cannot make them provide evidence. We cannot make them give us names to witnesses. It is really up to them about what they do or don't want to do. Additionally, they have the right to present witnesses, so any people that they think would be important for people to talk to as part of the investigation process. And then the things that are asterisked on this form are really just there if this from investigation, and again, I'm not going to get too much into this because Autumn would speak to this when she talks about her role. If this goes on to adjudication through the student conduct system, the asterisk points become really relevant, meaning that the college cannot have a hearing without all parties being given the opportunity to be present. They cannot make a decision and not let all parties know. So those are parts of the due process rights and that really high level of expectation of communication moving forward. The other thing that's discussed with the accused individual and with the reporting individual is that retaliation is not tolerated. So meaning, let's say someone who's been accused of sexual and interpersonal violence decides to retaliate against the person who's filed this report against them, that would potentially be separate student conduct charges, regardless of whether or not they're found responsible for what they originally reported to have done. Separately, if a reporting individual retaliates against someone and causes harm, it's the same sort of thing. So it's that equal expectation that moving forward, all parties involved aren't going to cause harm to one another. They aren't going to engage in retaliation. They aren't going to engage in harassment. So things such as the retaliation expectation and policies are in place to try to lessen the possibility of that happening. And the interim measures such as the no contact order are in place, again, to try to mitigate that harm from happening. It's important to talk a little bit more about retaliation, though, because again, the expectations of this are sometimes different for different people, meaning, while we can take direct action against someone who has caused harm against someone based on the fact that they previously caused harm against them or they accuse them of causing harm, we cannot stop people from talking about cases. So when we meet with someone, whether they're reporting individual or accused individual or witness, we explain to them how important it is to be private about this, and how important likewise it is to have support people, meaning we aren't in a position of trying to silence people from talking and getting support, but that this information should not be spread over social media or to friend groups or become part of the rumor mill, because that really can interrupt the process, a fair process, from happening. If people are potentially causing harm through social media, either themselves or having other people cause harm through social media or in person, face to face, and we are given notice of that, there are actions that would be taken. So, I mean, it would be sharing people's names and personal information and using derogatory language and specific attacks on that person. Those are things that can be, people will be held accountable for. But someone just vaguely discussing something with someone in private, behind closed doors, or speaking about it without sharing those personalized information is much more difficult to navigate on a college campus. And it is, unfortunately, something that we don't have a good way to get a handle on, meaning in most cases where someone has experienced sexual or interpersonal violence, there is some level of social engagement by peers where people take sides. And ultimately what we communicate to people as support people is that we're not asking you to investigate this. You should not be investigating this. We're not asking you to stop caring and loving and supporting people who may have been accused of something like this. But what we're asking you to do is to be mindful of not causing any harm and not be taking social broad-based positions where you're working to rally support one way or the other, because this can cause so much more harm and ongoing harm for all parties involved, whether it's the reporting individual, the accused individual, or the witnesses. This is really difficult stuff to navigate, and those are conversations that our office is open to having with people at any point in time. If you have questions, if you're struggling as someone who's reporting, wants to report an incident of harassment, discrimination, or violence, or has reported it, or an accused individual, or a friend or support person, please reach out to us. We will connect with you over video, over the telephone, via email in the ways that we can, because our ultimate goal is to find a way to support everyone, to mitigate harm, and to help work on coming up with ways to restore of some level of restorative justice, in that ultimately there will many times in these cases be a finding that one side or the other is not happy with, but how can we move forward from this and heal in a way that all individuals involved feel respected, feel supported, understand even if they don't agree with the processes or choices or decisions that were come to, and then ways that we can restore the community so that we are preventing this type of violence from occurring at the levels of which it is at this point in time. So I'm going to stop the share now. For now, I think that this is all that I will add to this video because I think it's pretty lengthy at this point. And I think if I've missed anything, I will provide a supplemental video from this or answer it in a Q&A session later. If you have any questions as a result of this video, concerns, or so on, please reach out to me at title.ix@plattsburgh.edu. If there are things you would like to see us presenting on, please let us know. We'll be happy to do so. Hopefully we'll be putting videos out like this multiple times per week. And as I said, we were working on figuring out ways that we can hold affinity spaces, so spaces where we can connect with people who might be experiencing different levels of violence or isolation during this time. So thank you. Have a great day.